Okay, let's get started. Debbie. Welcome to class. Thanks for coming. Anybody have any leftover questions, concerns, thoughts, things that you were wondering about related to the course, the project, any of the presenters and stuff? Or was everything perfectly clear? Perfectly clear? That's good. If you come up with a question or something, just email me and I'll answer it. Two evaluation forms for the price of one today. We got the standard class session evaluation form on top, and on the bottom are the pre-lecture discussion topics. So these are things that I'm soliciting from you. So you tell me what you want to hear about, and I'll do it, okay? So you can select as many of them as you want. I'll total them up, and hopefully I'll get through several of them. Most of these I've done before, so it's not a big deal for me to do it again, but they're all interesting topics. Okay, so everybody, when they're filling out their form, take a look at what writing instrument you have in your hand. If it's a pencil, put it down and grab a pen. Because what I do with these evaluation forms is that I scan them and send them to the guest lecturer so he knows how the class thought he did. And if it's in pencil, it doesn't scan as good. So that's the reason for that. Okay? So each lecture has a web page, and at the bottom of the web page is a section called lecture material that has photos and slides from the presenter, as well as web links to things that he might have talked about, or things that were or links that were in the slides. So I'll be sure to check that out as well. The Meet with Dave sign-up sheet is important. Well, why is it important to meet with me? Well, if you're working on a team project or an individual project, I want you to check in with me. And why would you want to do that? Well, I know a lot of stuff. I can make it easier for you. I can have your result be better, which will optimize your grade. Okay, so, and I have cookies, so I mean, there are 3 good reasons right there, right? And I'm a nice guy, and basically I'm on everybody's team. Okay, so I want to participate in the team. So just come to me. I'll make sure you're on the right path and doing things that will lead to a very successful project and a good project experience. Okay. So I'm wearing a wireless microphone, and there's the receiver over there, and that gets hooked up to the camcorder. So it's not for the PA system, it's for the camera. Just want to make that clear. A little bit of summarizing from Tuesday's lecture. So as Gail pointed out, what you want to do is interview your user, the person who suggested the project, get a lot of their insights on their problem and their challenge, but it's not limited to just that. To fully understand the problem, you have to realize that the user may not know everything, especially know everything about what a good solution might be, because he or she might not be as creative as you, might not have a familiarity with technology that could be brought to bear on something. You guys do, okay? So you need to do other things, like research what already has been done. There's articles, there's research that's been done, there's products, there's actually earlier student projects that you may want to check out, because you want to build on those things rather than duplicate an effort that wasn't really successful. You want to consult with experts, and that would be people like me and Debbie and some of the other people I talk to. You may want to talk to other rehab engineers, and I can show you how to do that. Most importantly, you want to find the solutions for this problem that are already out there but don't seem to work. If there is a solution to the problem that you're addressing, then you wouldn't have to work on the project, right? So there's something wrong with the products that are out there, and it's going to be up to you to figure out why those products didn't work and come up with a better solution. And in order to do that, you take a look at technology that can be brought to bear on the problem, and it could be something electronic, it could be a mechanical system or something like that. So if you have those in mind, then you can integrate that into your brainstorming session, and you think, if I use this part and we build it this way, then it might be successful. So that's why you do that. And from all this knowledge, you can determine what the need is, not just from a user point of view, but from a more global point of view. And the next step is to brainstorm, and that is to come up with, the idea there is to come up with lots of different ideas, and even thinking about wild ideas, because there might be a good idea on the other side of a really wild and wacky idea. So you just want to explore that. You want to select top concepts, and you may want to do some prototyping on each one to see which one's better initially. But the main iteration is to fabricate something, test it out, analyze how well it worked, redesign it to work better, and repeat the whole process until the end of the quarter. So that's what you're going to do. And of course, you want to work closely with the person who suggested a project or a user to make sure that it's working in a way that might solve his or her problem. And a key thing in this class is to present what you have in midterm and final and write a report, and at the end of the quarter reflect on your experience. So I want to say that lab notebooks are not required in here. It's okay for you to do one, but I don't want to look at it or grade it. But if you're accustomed to doing that, go right ahead. You may want to, it's okay to have a sketchbook, whatever enables you to go through this process is fine. I'm going to ask at the end to reflect on your experience. So you may have a notebook to write down how you felt about the project at different times of the quarter. So you can do that. I strongly suggest that you take photos of what you do, maybe even short videos, especially during the fabrication process, the testing process and stuff, because you can use these photos and videos in your presentations. It makes a very compelling presentation if you have pictures of things and how you did things. Rather than have to explain it, it's a lot quicker to show a picture or a short video. Okay? Well, you definitely want to save all your prototypes, and it's a good way to show the process. Okay? Time is the most precious commodity you have, so don't waste it. You only have a finite amount of time. You don't get more time. Everybody gets the same amount. There's only 7 weeks of class left to work on your projects. That may seem like a long time, but it's going to go by really quick. And in just 4 weeks is the midterm presentation, so even a shorter time. So what I'm trying to say is, get going early. The more time you work on it, the better it's going to be. The less time at the end, you're not going to be stressed out at the end of the midterm or the quarter on your projects. So people who are working on fabricating a solution, get your PRL shop pass. Go through the safety check. Get that early. Don't wait until a week before, until week 4 or 5. Do it now. Because the sooner you have access to that, the sooner you can fabricate things. The sooner you have access to the PRL TAs who can help you as well. Okay, so make sure you do that. So there's been 5 teams formed so far. Here are the teams so far. Magic Cove Bridge Playground has the 2 projects filled up. A couple for the prosthetics projects. I got a project with Danny there, so that's great. So there's still like 3 teams that need to be formed. So please do that by the end of the week. There's exactly 9 people left. So get those teams formed and get me the name of the team, unless you want to be called the team with no name, which is pretty ugly. the members and the project you want to work on. Okay? So, who was a little stumped by this question on Tuesday? Double the freezing point of water. Well, we all know the freezing point is 0, and you multiply 0 by anything, and it's still going to be 0. So a million times, 0 is still 0. But twice 32 Fahrenheit is 64, but no, what's wrong here? It's obviously not right. Does anybody know what's wrong? Two students got it right, so. It should be simple, right? Okay, but it isn't. It's a little tricky because you have to use absolute zeros. So Fahrenheit and centigrade are part of a larger scale. So 0 degrees centigrade is not 0 temperature. It's just along the scale. So you have to use Kelvin, which has absolute zero as absolute 0 temperature. So that freezing is 273 degrees Kelvin, and twice that is 546. Subtract 273 from that, and you get double the freezing point in centigrade, and which is equal to 523 degrees Fahrenheit. So now you know. Okay, I've got another little brain teaser on this one too. So we'll see what happens. So every year I like to spend a little time on discussing Martin Luther King. So this is not going to be a technical discussion, but I've thought about this over the years, and I thought I'd engage with a little discussion for you. So when you see this famous quote of his, what do you think? Who's the guy that took 3 cookies? You get the first shot. Have you heard of this? Yeah. Okay. What does it mean to you, or you haven't thought about it?
I think it's something that is a constant struggle.
A struggle. Okay. That's good.
That
Okay, that's enough. Now, next I'm going to call on just the A students to talk about this. Who's an A student in here? Yeah, okay, we can see what's happening here. You're not identifying as an A student because you're just how many people are afraid or embarrassed to raise their hands? Okay, let me go through this. I have a dream. So he's thinking about something that maybe isn't real. Maybe it's something that hasn't happened yet. Something in the future, okay? Are you with me? Okay. And I have a dream that my 4 little children. Well, do you think he's just talking about his 4 kids? Or he's just using that as an example for a larger population? Okay. So I think he's talking about everybody there, really. Okay? Will one day live in a nation where they'll not be judged by the color of their skin. Okay? But we also know there's other kinds of diversity besides skin color. We have race, gender, economic status.
I just wanted to know if
Sorry.
grandchildren are still playing the fight.
Yep. Yeah. 2 of his 4 children were on TV on Monday, so they're all grown up now. So, and certainly, it's not really a part of the diversity discussion, but people with disability and older adults are a diverse part of the diversity discussion. Wouldn't you agree? So maybe expand the color of the skin to include the diversity of everybody, okay? Is everybody okay with that so far? Tony?
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Okay. By the book's cover, the color, the
Cover.
okay.
You don't know what's inside.
That's right. What's inside of everybody is their character. And he's talking about the content of their character. So wouldn't that be great that you judge somebody by their inside, the content of the character, what kind of person they are. I think this is what he meant. And I want to further add that disability and advanced age do not represent a weakness in character. So a person can be disabled and they have their own character, which is independent of their disability or their age. Okay? Everybody get that? Did I offend anybody? Okay. All right. Let's move on. So Tuesday we're going to have a talk by several Stanford students with a disability, and they're going to talk about themselves and their disability, the challenges that they've had, and how they made it to Stanford, and how they're being great Stanford students. So this is usually a very interesting class, and most of the class would agree that it's one of the best lectures in the class. Okay. But today we're going to have Debbie Kenny with a couple of her guests talk about bridging the gap between consumers and products in rehab medicine. And I'll give you 5 minutes break as we set up. So be back here in about 5 minutes. Sign the attendance sheet if you haven't done so already. Pick up a handout if you haven't done so.
And I really, really encourage students to move to the front of the classroom because you're going to have trouble with the second part of my talk. This is a participation moment. You will get the most out of this lecture if you participate.
Okay, 5 minutes. Keep it running. I turn over the wireless microphone to you. You want me to pin it on?
I do.
Why don't you just clip it on, because actually there's a button in front that actually mutes it if it's...
Pressed. Okay, we'll make that work.
You got to load it? Okay. So I have till 5:30 for the whole thing?
No, 5:50.
5:50? Okay, all right.
I'm Jody. I'm the
Hi.
at Stanford.
Yes.
I wanted to say hello.
Hello.
I'm spying a little.
Okay.
Oh no, I didn't know about that. But I didn't know if you wanted and you did sign in.
It's fine. That's really for him. Have you seen this before? Have you seen me do it?
It's been a while.
Okay.
I just wanted to stay connected and just say hello.
All right, great.
Snuck out.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel on the spot. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to make you do the definition of OT.
I said I was Kim Kardashian today. I said I'm reality therapy. I was trying to say it was pretty funny. That's a new one. Well, thanks. I'll be right back.
Everything's on the website. Debbie, you want to share us up front?
I will want, I'm going to move this back. We can move, we'll have Nadine sit in her own chair, but we'll move 2 of the other chairs up front, one for Mike and one for Albert. Two chairs. And then Nadine will sit in her wheelchair. Okay. All right. We're not ready for you guys. I'll call you up in a little bit. Just remind you to keep your answers short. Keep the answers short. As I said, we'll try to engage these guys. These guys seem a little. I'm gonna tell them there's a test at the end. You're the test. There's some empty seats down here. here.
You want to see this? I mean, you really want to be down here.
Students, yeah.
Unless you're farsighted.
Okay, everybody who's in the back, I'm going to be calling on you.
You noticed the fear that
I do,
labeled
I
as
do,
a student
I do.
belonging to-
I'm gonna, yeah, this is gonna be a tough nut to crack, I think. What is this, my 10th time doing this? 12th year? Oh my gosh. How could that be? All right.
I should mention that students who sit closer get a better grade usually. I like that. And if you sit in the back, sometimes I wander around in the back when there's a guest lecturer. So I'll be standing right behind you if you're sitting in the back row.
Ready? All right.
Oh, wait, got it. Introduction.
Okay.
Everybody ready? Okay. This is my colleague, Debbie Penny. I worked with her a number of years at the VA Medical Center. I think we both had darker hair back then.
And I was definitely taller. No.
Yeah. Debbie is an occupational therapist working with stroke survivors and hand patients for the last 26 years. She splits her time as a researcher between Stanford and the VA. She has collaborated on numerous design, development, research projects, both with engineers as well as graduate medical and undergraduate students. Her work includes testing and integrating technology into the rehabilitation setting with individuals with Parkinson's disease, stroke, spinal cord injury, and an orthopedic surgery and rehabilitation and balance problems relating to aging. She currently works with problems of hand rehabilitation and treatment related to post-surgical pain and thumb arthritis, and continues to develop novel treatments for post-stroke survivors privately in the community. So let's welcome Debbie to the class.
Okay. So there will be a participation test at the end of this lecture, so do pay attention to what I'm going to say. First off, I don't know how many of the students know what an occupational therapist is. Do any of the students want to try to answer this question? What's an occupational therapist? Everybody's heard of a physical therapist, right? Yes? Okay. How many people have heard of what or have worked with an OT? Anybody?
Tony has.
Tony's an OT. That doesn't count. So occupational therapy does differ from physical therapy. It's the occupation. Occupation is your daily living, the things that you do as part of your daily life. That's your occupation. So as a student, what do? You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you put on your clothes, maybe you take a shower. How do you get to class, and how do you pathfind to class? All those are part of your daily living. And an OT works in those areas, and they work with people to strengthen problems that people might have to overcome a disability. It could be something like carpal tunnel, or to work on modifications if that's necessary, if we can't make the problem better. And we work both in areas of physical areas like physical disabilities as well as mental disabilities. Okay, so and of course about assistive technology and about how assistive technology is used. So a little bit about it. So what do? We're working on it to do a bunch of different things. Improve function, overcome disorder or impairment, prevent worsening of a condition, and strengthen a weakness. How could we use assistive technology to strengthen a weakness? Anybody want to take a guess? Give an example. How can you strengthen a weakness? Dave!
Exercise?
exercise. And the big difference, I think, between PT and OT is how we approach exercise, which is a really important thing, is that at PT, a lot of times we'll have you do crunches and we'll have you do lifting weights. Is a good OT will take your occupation, will take your interest into mind, and will incorporate those in an activity. For instance, I had a frozen shoulder and I needed to work a lot on my shoulder strength and my shoulder range of motion. And one of the things I had was small children. It was really easy for me to put them in a swing and to work on, pushing them in a swing and position myself in such a way that I worked on that range of motion. I worked on the strengthening. I could have sat there with TheraBand and I could have done this for a long time. But we know that that's not necessarily an effective way of getting people to exercise. Okay? So we talk about activities of daily living, also known as ADLs. We brought that up, your occupation, your activities of daily living. We talk about self-care. I had a lot of fun because every year that I've been doing this for 12 years, I go in and see kind of what's new in this, and we're looking at mobility here. And we have a quad cane, and we have the C-leg, we have different kinds of wheelchairs, and a lot of things that's coming up right now in the rehab assistive technology is these exoskeletons, both for using for people who have a disability or to prevent a disability. So we're using exoskeletons in the community for people like at Home Depot, if they're lifting heavy boxes and things like that. This is actually a person who's got a spinal cord injury, and this is a programmable exoskeleton, and it's helping her walk. We actually have a rehab project right now over in the rehab department where we're using one of the kinds of exoskeletons with that. This has got a GPS on the bottom of the heel. So there's some cool stuff out there. And every year it changes, and this is dressing is a big part. And you can see there's a big section here on putting on shoes. And this is often really difficult for people with disability. So if you only have one hand, how do you tie your shoelaces? Well, you could use something like this. It's like that, really inexpensive. You just go and you twist, and you're done, right? Okay. And here's something that has an ankle foot orthosis. This is for people who have a foot drop. But Nike's come up with some really interesting new technology. Now, this is designed to have a zipper compartment and Velcro in the back so you can slide into it like a slipper, but it actually functions as a regular shoe. And if you're having trouble because you don't have good range of motion on your ankle, this is a great thing, but it's also really, 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 really expensive. This one is really cool. Anybody seen this one ever before? This one from Nike? This one from Nike actually is has no shoelaces, has technology that when you rock it, actually tightens around your foot automatically. It's really cool. And again, really expensive compared to something like this, which is maybe not so expensive. You can get a pair of these for less than $1. Okay. We got Velcro, and it's a button hook, and this is how to put on socks if you can't reach down. Okay, eating and meal preparations are important. We have a non-stiff surface. Anybody interested and need it for their project, come and talk to me. This is Dyson, my favorite stuff. And if you go and you lean against it, it's not going to move. It's got a high coefficient of friction. It's great material to use on something where you need somebody not sliding on it. So this woman's using it under her meal bowl, and she's also using it to hold her hand on the table there. And one-handed can opener. And look, it's a one-handed beer bottle opener and reacher. I use a reacher in mine, so you don't have to be, have a physical disability necessarily to use some of these equipment, all right? And that's one of the great things that's coming out is that all this equipment that's coming out is coming out in the general market. And it can be used also for people with disabilities. That brings down the price, and that's really important. Eating is an important part of your self-care. And here we have, anybody seen this by Google? This is Liftwear. Do you have one?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got one. And does it work?
Yes.
Okay, so Lift has a little gyro in it, keeps the bowl or the fork always level, no matter what you do with your hand. So if you have spasticity, if you have tremor, it's always going to keep it level. That way you can get it to your mouth, okay? So it's cool. And what if you don't have use of your hands? You can use something like this. And there's, if you kind of look, and I have a bunch of different equipment, and you can kind of take a look at them later. They go from very, very simple stuff to, again, very, very complicated pieces of this. And this is an important part of when we talk about rehab equipment. Hygiene, again, important. How do you get in and out of baths if you have limited range of motion? How do you brush your teeth if you don't have hands? How do you, if you can't have enough strength to get up and down from a low toilet seat, how do you do that? There's equipment out there. And communication being a big role, okay? And I'm not going to talk about it. This is something that Dave designed and invented for people who are both blind, deaf. Somebody can type on the keyboard, and somebody who's blind deaf uses finger spelling, and they can feel the fingers spelling, and you can communicate with them that way. And his name is Ralph. Leisure and hobbies are, of course, another really important thing. And one of the community members showed me these, and they're really cool. They are adaptive hand levers for cars, and they are portable, so you can take them and use them in rental cars. And you see here, there's a joystick knob for if you're doing one-handed turning of a car. We have one-handed here, joystick for playing games. These, if you go to Natural Bridges, they have one of these big wheel wheelchairs, and so you can get down the beach easy. If you otherwise try to get it down the beach in a wheelchair, you're going to sink. This guy's got 2 prosthetics attached to his fins. Vocational education is important, and this is where we're starting to see some really big changes. Here we have something that reads and goes into Braille. Here we have a standing wheelchair, and it's really important to be able to be on the level and be able to get up to where you need to get up. And this is somebody who, again, is using an exoskeleton to prevent further injury. So when we go and we prescribe rehabilitation equipment, now, if you go to the store, you can get things like this, right? Anybody can use them. Some of these other things, like this, you might find in the drugstore. But bigger pieces of adaptive equipment, such as wheelchairs and stuff like that, do require a physician's prescription. And also, if an OT is going to see them or a PT is going to see them and evaluate them for equipment, we also need a prescription in order to do that. So what happens here between the MD and the end user? Well, we have a huge team of people that can be working with somebody who has a disability. Anybody from people who make assistive technology specialists, maybe in seating, to audiologists, PTs, OTs, social workers, all kinds of different people that may be involved in getting that person and making sure that person gets the equipment that they need. Okay? And it's not a one-size-fits-all, okay? This is my favorite example. This is a long-handled sponge. So if you've gotten a disability and you're sitting down, but you're not allowed to move past 90 degrees. And you're not allowed to go and do this. You can't do this because it's precluded because you're going to pop your hip out of your socket that we just gave you. How are you going to wash your feet? So you're going to have something, to do this, right? So it could be this, it could be something else. And we give these out to people a lot of times after hip surgery. But what happens when we start looking at these people at 2 months? We see that a lot of these people aren't using these devices anymore. And there's a lot of reasons people aren't using the device. Maybe they don't need it anymore. Maybe they've got a family member that's doing the job for them. Maybe we've never really taught them what this is for or how to use it or why they need to use it. So even if something as simple as a long-handled sponge is not guaranteeing that it's not going to end up in somebody's closet, you start getting to things that are like this, which is a really fancy splint, and you're going to start seeing more and more of these end up in people's closets because people don't necessarily understand all the parts to them, okay?
Sorry, doubtlessly people need these products, but they don't want them. Is that
Sometimes some people don't want them. Sometimes people have other family members who will take over that job. And again, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and we'll see that. So we need to talk about, when we successfully introduce a piece of adaptive equipment, what it is. So we need to go and talk to the patient, find out who that patient is, and do a home eval if possible. How do we introduce the device? How do we instruct and train in the device? And what justification for the insurance company? Because while this might not cost much, maybe this costs $15, something like this costs several hundred, okay? It may or may not be included in your insurance. Okay, so again, when we go and do a home eval, this is important, okay? Pay attention to the slide. So we need a change. Is the health status changing of the person? Can this person afford it? Will their insurance pay for it? What kind of physical environment? If we're talking about something like grab bars, can they install them in their house? Well, if you are renting an apartment, what do you think your landlord's going to say? Hopefully yes, because of ADA, but not necessarily, okay? So, and what kind of social aspects are there? Does the device make you look disabled? Or is it really cool looking and everybody uses it, like those Nike shoes, okay? And there's a lot of personal, components of this. And again, as I said, it's not about me saying, you've had a hip surgery, I'm going to give you a long-handled sponge. I need to find out something about you. Do you have caregivers at home? What's going on with you, okay? So we talked about each different kind of adaptive equipment requires a different level of training. So something like this, which is a fairly elementary one, if you don't have a grip, I just put this on your hand and you work on, if you've got the motion, you can use this. You can figure this out pretty easy. It doesn't require a lot of training. Something like this may require a lot more training. Wheelchairs actually require a lot of training on how to use a wheelchair. Okay? It's not straightforward. We don't just give them out to people and say, go for it. Or I hope we don't. We don't, do we? Yeah, and that's because people are in the hospital for a very short period of time, and we've got to get them equipment before they get out. And that's an important part of, again, with insurance and what we're facing as therapists with that.
A quick example is we had a patient order one off the 1-800 scooter wheelchair and fell out of it and crashed.
Yeah.
Realized we didn't know it was trained, and the vendor just gave it to him over and shipped it.
Right, and I've seen that. I had a friend who did that also with an elderly parent and got them a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair. They smashed into the wall in the first week and broke their foot and ended up in a nursing home unit, and they eventually passed away due to complications from that. Okay, so it's not without risk. Training's important. So then you get a high technology, So when you start looking at things that are run by computers, you start looking at stuff like an electric wheelchair and stuff like that. Way more high technology, way more expensive, way more time really needs to be spent in specifically training people. So again, so these things don't end up not being able to be used or somebody gets hurt.
Could you give us an idea of how much this wheelchair costs?
$8,000. That's the minimum.
That's the basics, and then you start adding on other pieces of equipment onto that wheelchair, and it starts going up in price. Yeah, so he's got all kinds of little things that are not that are custom to this wheelchair. Again, so that raises the price. And there's starting to be Medicare and Medicaid caps on these pieces of equipment, and as to how often you can replace this equipment is a problem.
Sorry, my sister-in-law shop wheelchair was $2,400, $24,000.
Yeah.
This expense goes up and down.
Right, right. So when they start tipping, they start being a lot more. And so we want to really be careful when we do that and we make sure that people are properly trained. So how does all of this all relate to you developing a product and what you're going to do in the class? So the key goal here is to involve all stakeholders. I showed you about the team. There's a large number of people on the team. We know, and some of us have been in the business a long time, kind of what's out there, what works, what doesn't, and why. Ask us. We're here to help you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help the teams with your product design. Don't just ask the person who you're designing it for. If you're designing it for one person, you might want to ask a couple other people who maybe have that same problem. You definitely want to ask family members if family members are involved with those people that you're designing a product for. Okay? So those are all really important things. And then whenever possible, please, please, please keep it simple. And I think this cartoon well demonstrates how you can make something and over-engineer a product. And I've seen this again where you come in and you've got a good idea and you think you have a real good grasp on what that disability is all about, and you don't, and you over-engineer the product. And again, where we have things that are come out on the market and then disappear from the market really quickly because they're too expensive, insurance companies won't pay for it, they're too difficult to learn how to use. Okay, good ideas. A great example that I've recently seen was something for somebody who has an injury to their brachial plexus. They don't longer have use of their arm. They can't feel their arm. And this gave them the ability to flex their elbow. Woohoo! And it weighed 20 some odd pounds. So here you've got not good use of your arm and you have something that weighs 20 pounds. How well do you think that that's going to work for people? Yeah, and we oftentimes see that with myoelectric hands too. Once the novelty wears off of the myoelectric hands, where they open and close, and you use what's residual muscle, they oftentimes end up in the closet because they're not as effective in terms of using them for ADLs. Okay. So keep it simple whenever possible. You can check this on later. There's some website links for different peoples. And we talk a little bit about that. Sometimes things end up in the closet. If anybody knows it's stuff that ends up in the closet or have stuff that ended up in the closet of your own rehab equipment you want to donate, again, this is on the website for the class. And there's some other resources here in terms of some papers that you might want to look at, also some other websites that you might want to look at. Remember, disability doesn't mean inability, okay? So we're going to practice some subject interviews, if I can have my group come up here. So, rules of the game. And this is where we're seeing how much you paid attention, okay? Rules of the game are you can't ask them if they've used the piece of adaptive equipment. You can ask them about themselves and find out a little bit about these people. Come on down, yeah. All these people are interesting. You need help? You got it? Yeah? Yeah, you got it. Yeah, right here at the end, Nadine. This is Nadine Grant. And let's turn you around, Nadine. Feet up. I'm going to scoot you back. All right. This is Albert Azizian and Michael Wee. And I want you to really explore with these guys, again, the social and personal factors, their economic and physical environments of these panelists, and find out what motivates these panelists. Again, you can't ask them if they've used certain pieces of adaptive equipment directly, okay? So even before I show you, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of adaptive equipment. You're going to find out whether they use them or not use them. We're going to take a vote. But first I want you to get to know them. So you guys, this is why I wanted you guys to come forward, because I wanted you guys to be able to ask these guys questions and find out about these people. These are really interesting people with really great varied life experiences. I do want to tell you they've had a CVA, which is either blood clot or a bleed, paralyzing half of their body. So right brain injury, left side paralysis, left brain injury, right side paralysis, different other problems, cognitive and speech that has to have effects from this. And some of these guys have some use of their hands, but not, I think Albert's probably got the most use of the hand of the whole group, and Nadine's got a little bit of use of her hands, and you got a little bit, teeny tiny bit.
The granularity is really
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so find out about these people. So who these people are, what they like.
Good evening, thank you for coming. I'm also a stroke survivor. Another question, on a scale of 1 to 5, how easy is it for you to cross a street?
For me, probably I'd say 7 or 8, but when I first had my stroke, I was in a wheelchair for a year. So that was almost impossible unless I could get somebody to push me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm on wheelchair. It's easy for me just to cross the road on wheelchair.
And when you walk?
When I can't, maybe it takes me longer because I limp my cheeks a lot. So
Yeah. And Nadine?
Was it a range from 1 to 5? 5 being harder?
Well, 5 would be difficult.
5 would be difficult, okay.
5.
A 5? Okay. All right,
Thank you for your time.
all right. Students,
What do each of you guys do for a living if you're no longer working?
good question.
I'm retired, but prior to my retirement, I was forced into retirement. I used to be a vice president of our own company. We started, and I was in marketing and sales.
I used to be electromechanical engineer, working for Memorex, working for Kodak, working for Cursor Graphic. Last 6 years, I have my own business all of a sudden.
I was a system, I was a programmer as well, but more of a systems engineer.
Can you guys hear in the back?
Okay.
Okay.
I worked for Rome and even in aerospace companies like QW. But my happiest time was at Rome. Then I started my own business.
What kind of hobbies do you enjoy?
I love photography as a kid, and when you get into the workforce, that all disappears. So stroke gave me the opportunity to reintroduce myself to photography, and I still use lenses from my high school days because I love manual lens.
I like photography and traveling.
Yeah, I like traveling too with piano. I don't have a weird set of interests.
Do you live alone or with others?
Good question.
I live with my wife and my son, but I'm pretty much independent. When I first got out of the hospital, I was dependent on my wife because I need somebody to help me transfer from the wheelchair and even to take a shower, but all of that changed after rehabilitation. So I'm independent now.
I live with my parents. In the first year, I need a lot of help with my medication, my going out of the bed and coming to sleep, taking a shower. I couldn't do anything by myself. But now I'm getting better.
Yeah, I live with my husband, and I'm dependent on 100% cooking, cleaning, especially.
Have you always lived in the Bay Area?
No, I lived in, I was born in Missouri, but grew up in Asia, the Philippines. And then I came here when I got married, and then I also lived in England. And then back after I had my stroke, in Tokyo, then that stopped my whole world. First, I got to stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, now you're back traveling the world again. He doesn't stick in one place long.
I'm Armenian. I live in different countries. Armenia, Iraq, Kuwait, Beirut, England, France, and I came here. I'm in this country almost 30 years.
Yeah, I'm from Hawaii, and I lived there most of my life. No. I've been here in Cupertino the last 30 years. No
Okay.
more.
You've been here over 50 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Could you share when was the stroke happen and how long it took for you to get to where you are right now?
I had my stroke on June 28, 2006 in Tokyo. I was traveling on business, and one evening things, because I travel to Tokyo every other month, I all of a sudden things just spun into silence, and then I lost control of my mobility. I couldn't even dial the number for the operator because numbers over there start with a 3 something, and I didn't know what combination number. So then I had aphasia, which means I lost short-term memory loss, and then
And he couldn't talk.
couldn't.
And how long till you got about the level of function you're at now? This, I think, what was the
It
question?
took me a year to be able to cross the street in my complex. That was my first walk. And then it took me probably another 3 years before I could travel to Spain. So I would say 3 years I could be independent.
Myself, I did it for 2 years. And I was on my shelf for 6.5 years. And my leg used to shake a lot. But after my stroke, the first letter I said L, 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 L. My name is Alba. Why repeating letter M? I have no idea. So, because my brother's name is Lee. So maybe I picked the L from his name. So then I learned all the alphabet. Like it took me 3 years just to say a sentence. After that, I started getting better.
And you keep getting better. Every time I see you, he changes. I don't necessarily see him that often anymore. And I've known you for about 10 years now. Yeah. And he keeps changing and improving.
Yeah, the problem is I had shingles, which debilitated me a lot more. And then I got a stroke. And I was able to speak, and cognitively I was fine.
And you continue to make improvements. How long ago was your stroke?
2010.
Okay. All right.
I had my stroke 16 years ago. I've been improving every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you never stop really
Yep.
improving.
They like to say 1 year, and it's not true. Okay. So our first piece of equipment is this wonderful rocker knife. It looks like, yes, I have to do the... Okay.
No, that way.
Oh, like I'm threatening them? What? Okay, yeah, it's like, okay. So, why a rocker knife? Why a rocker knife? Why is it designed like this? Anybody? Come on, engineers, come on.
Behind you.
These guys.
Okay.
Best guess is because it's a lot easier to roll something from side to side, and that does your cutting motion versus a quick back and forth motion. at the bottom.
So what do you think happens when you go back and forth versus rocking to the item that you've got on your plate?
If you have limited hand strength and dexterity, it's much harder to keep a hold of that knife as you go back and forth. And also the quick rapid motions probably be more difficult.
Okay.
You're going back and forth, maybe you're moving
Okay.
Also.
Right, right. You got it. So this is for stabilization. So, right? I can stabilize the object here. I am not moving as you said, the plate's not going to move back and forth, even if I have a piece of dice under it. If I don't have the use of two hands, I might use a rocker knife. So this would be a common piece of equipment, right, for somebody who's only got the use of one hand. Okay. So you guys have asked about them, and they can get really you can get really cute ones like this Ulu type of rocker knife, and they do go up about $30, you know, so they range. But so anyways, which of these three guys do you think uses them? So you've asked your questions. Is there any more questions you think you need to ask in order to answer this question?
I'm right dominant, and now I learned how to use my left.
Me too, right? No, I can't use my right. I'm using everything my left, but with the I can use my right hand. I use only my left hand because it's hard to get the letters.
He's got fairly good motion, some of the steadiness. Sometimes it's also the lack of sensation for Albert. And
I'm right hand dominant, but I can't write anymore.
okay, so you guys ready? Ready to vote? Okay, this is Michael, Albert, Nadine. Okay, who thinks that Michael uses a rocker knife? Okay, me, 2/3 of the students. Okay, we're not saying yet. Okay, who thinks that Albert uses the rocker knife? Okay, about half the students. Okay, and who thinks that Nadine uses a rocker knife? Okay, all right. Okay, raise your hand if you use a rocker knife. Okay, so Michael, why don't you use a rocker knife?
Well, when I do cooking, I have a different aid. I have a chopping board where you can take a tiny piece and it's got spikes. And when you slam the fruit or the vegetable, then you can slice nicely.
Okay, so a piece of adaptive equipment, and why don't you use it, Nadine?
Times 12.
Because she's got Dave. Okay? So remember, so when we talk about this adaptive equipment, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It really is very personalized. Okay? This is part of the point here. So now we've got this lovely low-tech device, these $3 to $15. You've seen these. It can be used for a lot of different things. So who do you think, do you guys need to ask any more questions about this particular device? Yeah, guns. You can do all kinds of things. You can mount all kinds of things on there, right? Okay. Yeah, you can make it come together. You can wear it like a piece of jewelry. You can do all kinds of things with it. Okay. Do you guys need to ask any more questions? Okay.
Is that mainly used for like camera accessories?
That's what it's originally designed for. It's not necessarily all that it can be designed for, but yeah, it's originally designed for cameras. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons it's cheap. Because if this was just a piece of adaptive equipment for the disabled community, you could bet this would be $50. Okay. So any other questions?
Have you changed the way you express your creative and artistic abilities since you become disabled? Do you write, do art, or anything differently now than you did before?
Initially, because of the aphasia, I could not even retain the thought of a sentence. So that was a challenge, so I had to figure out a way to overcome the difficulty, and the way I did that was I pretended I sped read, and because if you don't, my brain sort of gets into a cramped position, then you can never think and you can never push forward. But if you relax your mind, you pretend that you're really, pretty soon you're picking up words, first becomes 3, then becomes 5, then pretty soon, today I can write contract, I can write articles of incorporation, no problem.
Are you asking more of the question, though, about, like, did they go from being, you know, a very realistic kind of art versus impressionist?
By finding different ways to think and express, you discovered any way to be perhaps artistic, maybe now you can write poetry you couldn't before, or you found a way to express things.
In new ways, yeah.
My expression is through my camera, because it's always something that I love since high school.
Yeah.
So did I change the way? I don't think so. I just changed the way I implement my equipment to achieve the same result.
Okay. All right. Albert, anything?
Yes, myself, because when I had myself, I couldn't use nothing. Even I forgot my knowledge, but I was trying to think about something to learn. So I used my brain. I got part of my knowledge back. So now I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do 10 years ago.
Yeah. I'm not reading as much as I used to. I used to read, to give you an idea, I read the book Hawaii in 3 days. I could read it a lot. And now I'm slowed down. So I read half a book in 4 days.
Okay.
The one thing also, in 2000 we started our own company, and so I was in project marketing. When you get into this grind of thinking, the creativity part of it, it doesn't go away. Because when I found myself disabled, when somebody mentions an idea, my brain just goes into the wheels keep turning, but I have my difficulties. So if you can communicate it, then you can still function in your new normal. So that's what I call it.
That's a good thing. New normal. Okay, so let's take a quick vote and get on to the next piece. So who do you think? Do you think Nadine uses this piece of equipment? Anybody? Okay. All right. How about Albert? Does Albert use this piece of equipment? A few more. Okay. Does Michael use this piece of equipment? So the answer is.
Whoever use the camera have that. Also, I do not only have 3 tripods.
Yeah, it was interesting too, the way Michael first utilized it wasn't just as a tripod on the ground. He actually used it on his body to kind of stabilize the camera so that he could do things with the lens.
So
Yeah.
when your professor talked about prototyping, this was my prototype.
Right.
Because I didn't know the dimensions of my body and how I could handle the camera, because you have to remember, camera's right-handed, right, for a shutter. Now you're left-handed. It's not designed for left-handed people.
Right.
So that was a challenge I had to overcome.
Okay.
I'm curious how you use that as an adaptive different way, which is a camera. Because I've used something similar in my work with using that, or unless the class knows other ways that can be used for the whole process.
Mostly prototyping, but as a secondary hand, because you need to anchor something when you're doing something. And what I found is when you want to stabilize something, you need 2 points minimally. So if you can get 3 points, then you get stability.
Yeah, so you were stabilizing against your chest and everything like that.
Chest.
Right.
You put a phone on it, or use it in a different book.
Yeah, you can put all kinds of devices. That's what I was saying, to here. This is just an end, you can do whatever you want with this. Don't be, constrained by what it's designed for. Be creative. And that's one of the things that OTs are really, really good at.
If you have also, you can climb to the tree,
Yeah.
take a picture, put on the car,
Yeah.
take a picture.
Okay. So, final one, I think, do we have time for this one more? Sure. Okay, we have time for one more. This is the Sabo stretch. There's also a Sabo flex. Sabo stretch is for people who sometimes when you get going, you can see this a little bit with Nadine's hand, you can see she's tight, right? Really tight. We call that muscle tightness, especially when it's reactive to being stretched. We call it spasticity. And so sometimes what we'll do is we'll put people in different kinds of splints to kind of stretch that out. Interesting though, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? Is that we've been doing this for years and years and years and years, and now we're finding out it may have absolutely no effect on people regaining range of motion and motion of their hand at all after stroke, and that maybe it's not such a great thing to do. But this was state of the art, you know, and still most OTs, I would say, who work with people with stroke will use some kind of device if you've got a lot of spasticity. If your hand's really tight like this and it's it's a hygiene matter and stuff like that, you want to get this hand open, right? There's a tendency is like, oh, well, if I stretch it for a long time, it's going to relax and it's going to be good. This is a Sabo stretch. It's supposed to react with the changes of spasticity, because sometimes we get people and then they get loose. You know, you put them in cold water, they get loose. Then they tighten up over the time, and then they get loose again. So it changes. There's a variability to the spasticity that exists, and so there's this. And the Sabo Flex, which is this big deal here that's got all the contraption, it looks like some kind of gothic horror story, is to open that fingers up again to help you supposedly, because a lot of times when you've had a stroke, you get that flexion here in your hand, but you don't get the extension. So you can grab, so even if your hand's thing and you go grab something, you grab it and it's like you can't let go of it. So this is the idea, it's going to help you to let go. There's problems with this. The problems with the more expensive one is that if you are living on your own, there is no way you're going to get that on.
Sorry, now, in the classroom, when we play game, when I hold the ball, I can't release it.
Yeah.
Every time I want to throw the ball,
The hand tightens up. Yeah, especially if you're moving appendage really quick, spasticity will kick up. Yeah, so spasticity will kick up. So here we have the Sabo stretch. Again, there's other devices out there that work on the same kind of principle. Is there any questions you need to ask these guys before you decide whether they use either the Sabo stretch or the Sabo flex? Okay, no? Okay. Okay, so who thinks that, Michael, you want to show him your hand? Okay, you got it loose now, and it does tighten. He's just spent some time getting it loose, and he's got a little bit of movement. So who thinks that he uses a splint every day? Anybody? Okay, some of you, maybe half of you? Okay. Who thinks that he uses the Sabo Flex? Anybody? Okay. All right. Who thinks he uses the Sabo Stretch? That's the static one, this one. So does anybody think does anybody think that anybody uses this? Okay. Or has tried it? Okay. All right. All right. You think. Who do you think's tried it? Okay, you think Albert's tried the Sabo Flex or the Sabo Stretch? Flex, okay. You think he's tried the Sabo Flex. That's the one with all the rubber bands and everything. Okay, so who thinks that Albert uses a splint? Anybody? Nobody thinks that Albert uses, one person? Okay. Who thinks that Nadine uses a splint? Okay, about 2/3 of the class. Okay, Nadine, do you use a splint? Have you ever used the splint?
Yes.
Did you like the splint?
No.
Why didn't you like the splint?
Because it didn't fit my hand.
Because it didn't fit her hand. And here we have this thing that costs at a minimum of $350, and it didn't fit her hand. Woohoo. Okay. Did you ever use the Sabo Flex? That's the one that's each individual finger goes and it opens the hand up. No, okay. All right, who thinks that Albert used is a splint? Nobody? You said one person. Okay, so Albert, do you use splints? Did you at first?
My husband was like this.
Yeah, okay, did you ever use the splint? Okay. Did you ever use the other splint? Could you do, okay, all right, okay, all right. And then Michael. Do you guys think Michael used the splint? Well, there's a couple people who did, okay? So Michael, did you ever use a splint?
Yes, when I had my initial stroke.
Okay. Did you ever use the splint?
No.
Okay. Was it ever offered to you?
No.
Okay. So,
And besides, I wouldn't be interested
yeah. And why?
because it's difficult to install.
Put on and off. Okay, really important.
For people that it is effective to use, is it good to use at nighttime, I guess, when you're sleeping?
Well, that was a theory. And so, as I said, what's really interesting, so we used to put people to sleep in these kinds of splints, and sometimes they still were on in the morning. And then we found out, as I said, they did a double-blind RCT study about people who use splints and people who don't use splints, who've had strokes and who have spasticity, and there was just no difference between the two groups. And it's really hard to put on by yourselves.
Exactly. The reason I have one hand, how I'm going to put the Velcro, make it straight, a lot of difficult things.
Or even to
put it in.
insert the
Yeah.
fingers are not rigid, and if they are, but basically they're drenched.
Yeah, exactly. And so but there's people out there who will give them these pieces of equipment, and it's not necessarily a great thing. Final example, and there's no time to ask them any questions. Who do you think? This is Bioness. It's an FES, functional electrical stimulation. It allows for a little bit of movement to actually go for wrist extension and finger extension through this little stimulator pads. And you can see there in the picture that the hand is opening up when the button's pushed. Again, another device to help to open the hand or to make the wrist go up. And it's really expensive. It's over $6,000. Do you think anybody uses that in this group? Good answer. Yeah, and again, this is something that people peddle out there, and you just have to be careful. So if we looked at it, and we looked at it at face value, right, all these people have problems raising their wrists. So wouldn't that seem like that was a really great device to use for these guys? And the answer is probably not. Again, it depends on what they need functionally, where they're at in their lives. Are they getting their ADLs done without this piece of equipment? Is it really going to improve their hand function? There's no proof that using this device is going to improve their hand function. Okay? So other questions for these guys? And because this is the very last minute of the class, is there anything you want to ask?
What do you think contributes to your total recovery? Like, what advice would you give to other people who are
Can you repeat the question?
What's the major,
What is
what makes a huge difference?
What made a huge difference for you in your recovery? One sentence.
creativity?
Okay, what makes a huge difference?
Repeatability.
Repeatability, okay. Keep trying.
Keep trying.
Keep trying and trying and trying. You don't always succeed at first, and you keep making improvements over many, many years. Okay, Nadine, what's it? For you, I think it's...
I swear, like I said,
I think it's just support, and I think, I know you push her. I know you push her to do more. Yeah, and I think that for Nadine is an important factor too. If you guys want, I do have more pieces of equipment up here, and I want to really thank all of our guests that came today to talk with you.
I want to thank Debbie as well.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to come down here and take a look at the devices she has on the table or the suitcase. And Chris is here, and he has this really neat lever drive scooter that he wants to show. So anybody who's a mechanical engineer
be really interested in this because it provides propulsion in both directions. So he'll take it outside in the back in the dark. So thanks so much. Have a great weekend, and see you next week.